We're in Psalm 96 as part of this series from the enthronement Psalms, the Psalms that describe God being enthroned, God reigning, God is king, trying to help us believe, in spite of all the craziness of life, that there's still someone in charge. There's still someone in control. And they help us to explore what it might look like to live as if that was really the case. Psalm 96 explicitly says this. Let's say these words out loud together. Say among the nations, the Lord reigns. Psalm 96 wants us to learn to live as if the Lord reigns. The psalm has 3 sections. Each section has its own command. The command of the first section, verses 1 through 6, is sing. 3 times it says, sing, sing, sing. The command in the second section, verses 7 through 9, is ascribe, an unusual word. It's a word that just means to acknowledge. 3 times it says, ascribe, ascribe, ascribe. And then the command of the third section, verses 10 through 12, is singular, say, declare, say among the nations, the Lord reigns. And so as the psalm leads us through the reign of God, it calls for composition, for you creative types to compose a new song about the reign of God. It calls for confession, for all of us to acknowledge, to confess that there are things that are true about the reign of this God, and it calls for declaration, for us to stand and to declare to all the nations that this is true about our God. He reigns. Now, one of the things that's distinctive about Psalm 96 is the way in which it paints the reign of God as inclusive, a reign that includes all the peoples of this earth. And so this theme is woven through all 3 parts. We see it in the first part, verses 1 through 6, where the author talks about all the earth, the nations, all the peoples. We see it again in the second part of the psalm, where the author writes about the families of the peoples and all the earth. And then it really picks up steam in the third section, where the author writes about the nations, the world, the peoples, the earth, the sea and all that fills it, the field and everything in it, all the trees of the forest. What Psalm 96 wants us to know is that the reign of God is inclusive. It includes all the peoples of the earth. It includes all creatures of the earth, even every tree of the forest. Now, like most ancient religions, the Psalms are proclaiming God reigns. But unlike most ancient religions, the Psalms are saying God reigns over all the earth, all the peoples, all that ever was, all that is now, all that ever will be. It would not be unusual, if you lived in the ancient world, for another religion to say, God reigns. But when those ancient religions said, our God reigns, they meant our God reigns for us. Our God reigns only for us. And the reign of our God extends only to the reach of our own tribe or our own nation. And the benefits of our God's reign are experienced only by us. But when Psalm 96 says our God reigns, it's saying something entirely different. It's saying that God's reign extends beyond the borders of any nation. God's reign extends beyond the experience of any single person. God's reign extends far beyond the life of any tribe or group. His reign touches every person on the planet. His reign touches every creature in creation. And so the psalm is comparing and contrasting that God with those gods. And so it says right out in verse 5, He is to be feared above all gods, for the gods of the peoples are worthless idols, but the Lord made the heavens. Psalm 96 wants us to know that there is something superior about the God we claim to worship. And his superiority is found in the extent of his reign. His reign exceeds every boundary we might consider. There's no human on the earth who doesn't fall under the reign of this God. And so, having established that, the psalmist then tells us what God is going to do with that inclusive reign. Verse 10 and verse 13. He will judge the peoples with equity. For he comes to judge the earth. He will judge the world in righteousness and the peoples in his faithfulness. Now, at first, those words might sound scary, but they're intended to be soothing. Instead of the word judge, we might use the word justice. For he comes to bring justice to the earth. Justice that's equitable, justice that's righteous, justice that's based in his faithfulness to all whom he has made. The psalmist is saying that because God's reign is so inclusive, the justice he brings is also inclusive. One of the great problems with justice on the earth is that it is so often missing. It is so often delayed or never delivered. And what the psalmist wants us to know is that he comes. He comes to bring justice to all who need it. And so it begins now, the psalm does, to touch on one of those universal longings. N.T. Wright, in his book Simply Christian, says that the hunger for justice is one of the most fundamental and universal among all of humanity. You can hardly come across a single human who's not experienced injustice in their own life or who is not outraged at injustice in the world around them. And the longing for justice is universal. And the psalmist is telling us that because God's reign is inclusive of all people, he comes to bring justice even where justice has been exclusive of some people. Anywhere justice has been denied, it will now be supplied by this God. This is in part what Martin Luther King Jr. meant when he said, "We shall overcome, because the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice." He believed that there was an inevitability about justice because of the reign of God. That everywhere justice is denied, it would eventually be supplied. And so the psalmist is saying, who gets justice? Let me tell you, all the earth gets justice. Who gets justice? I'll tell you, all the peoples get justice. Who gets justice? The nations get justice, the author says. Who gets justice? The sea and everything in it get justice. Who gets justice, the psalm asks? Well, it's the fields and everything in them. Who gets justice? All the trees of the forest get justice. Anywhere it has been denied, it will be supplied. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't have some work to do in bringing justice upon the earth and righting wrongs upon the earth. This arc does not bend towards justice without our efforts. And we'll look at that in more detail next Sunday in Psalm 97. But this Sunday, Psalm 96 calls us to the work of God, to trust in the judgment of God upon the earth. Gary Hagen has written a book called The Locust Effect, and he writes about the broken justice among the poor. So he says, to visualize the way public justice systems in the developing world work for hundreds of millions of the world's poorest people, I find myself thinking about the old broken down truck that always sat rusting and decomposing amidst the weeds in the back corner of my grandfather's raspberry farm when I was a kid. If you asked him if he had a truck, he'd say, sure. And he could point to things on the truck called an engine and tires and steering wheel. But if you asked him if it worked, he'd smile slightly over the absurdity and say, oh no, no one had driven it in decades. No raspberries had been hauled. No supplies had been moved. In fact, I best not go near it, he would advise. It's just a hideout for snakes and spiders now. Likewise, for the great mass of poor people in the developing world, if asked about the public justice system, they could probably point to things in their country called police or courts or laws or lawyers. But these things are useful to them in the same way the truck was to Grandpa. That is, not at all. Just as my family had no experience of anyone ever making use of Grandpa's truck for trucking, the poor in the developing world have no life experience of the justice system being a useful source of justice for them. In fact, police, courts, laws, and lawyers have become, like the rusty truck in the weeds, mysterious at best and dangerous at worst. In a world of broken justice systems, to a world of people who feel like they lie outside the hope of justice, the psalmist says, for he comes. He comes to judge the peoples of the earth. Fleming Rutledge, in a book on the crucifixion of Jesus, writes about God's outrage. A slogan of our times, he says, is, where's the outrage? It's been applied to everything from big pharma's market manipulation to CEOs' astronomical wealth to police officers stonewalling. Where's the outrage? Inquire many commentators, wondering why congressmen, officials, and ordinary voters seem so indifferent. Why has the gap between the rich and the poor become so huge? Why are so many mentally ill people slipping through the cracks? Why does gun violence continue to be a hallmark of American culture? Why are there so many innocent people on death row? Why are our prisons filled with such a preponderance of black and Hispanic men? Where's the outrage? The public is outraged over cyberspace, about all kinds of things that annoy us personally. The NIMBY, not in my backyard syndrome. But outrages in the heart of God go unnoticed and unaddressed. If we're resistant to the idea of the wrath of God, we might pause to reflect the next time we are outraged about something, about our property values being threatened, or our children's educational opportunities being limited, or our tax breaks being eliminated. All of us are capable of anger about something. God's anger, however, is pure. It doesn't have the maintenance of privilege as its object, but goes out on behalf of those who have no privileges. The wrath of God is not an emotion that flares up from time to time, as though God had temper tantrums. It is a way of describing his absolute enmity against all wrong, and he has come to set matters right. And whether you're thinking about something in your own life that is not right, or you're thinking about the latest news report of something that is not right, Psalm 96 is saying, oh, he's coming. He is coming. He has absolute enmity against all that is wrong. And he is coming to set things right, no matter the corner of the earth, no matter the person on this planet. And so the question is, what would it look like to live as if that is true? Three things. First, Psalm 96 invites us to trust that God will indeed supply justice when others deny it. Now, it's not an excuse for just thoughts and prayers when things are going wrong in the world. I think virtually any time something's going wrong in the world, we are invited to take action against it. But Psalm 96 does call us as we take action, as we endure injustice, as we watch injustice across the world. Psalm 96 calls us to do so from a posture of hope, a posture of faith, a posture of trust. We do not have to despair. We are the people living as if there is a God whose reign is inclusive of all and whose capacity to bring justice extends to every person and place on the earth. Second, Psalm 96 invites us to thank God when justice is supplied. Again and again, the psalm uses commands to tell us what to do when we see God finally bring some justice into our own lives or into some circumstance in the world around us. Sing, 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 it says. Ascribe, 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 it says. Say among the nations, the Lord reigns. There's no contradiction here between wanting to be people of action that are participating in the reign of God and righting the wrongs in the world, and coming to places like this and stopping and pausing and doing nothing but praising and thanking and singing and ascribing and saying. The psalmist urging us to be willing to stop, to pause, to incorporate praise and worship into our lives. Every time we see God bring justice, to stop and to sing and to ascribe and to say. Worship must be part of the regular rhythm of those who care about justice. And then third, I think Psalm 96 invites us to expand our circle of empathy. If the only injustices that concern us are the injustices that take place against people that look like us or live like us, we do not understand the reign of God. Psalm 96 is telling me as a man to be concerned about injustices against women. It's calling me as a 55-year-old to be concerned about injustices against 5-year-olds. It's calling me as a white person to be concerned about injustices against people of color. It's calling me as a heterosexual to be concerned about injustices against the LGBTQ+ community. It's calling me as a Christian to be concerned about injustices against Muslims or Hindus. It's calling me as an American to be concerned about injustices against Ukrainians and Haitians and those in Sudan. It's calling me to widen my circle of empathy so that it looks more and more like the reign of God. For He's coming. He's coming. The Lord comes, the psalm is saying. He comes to judge the peoples of the earth. And that is cause for great joy, for singing and ascribing and saying among the nations, the Lord reigns. The Lord reigns indeed. The Lord reigns.
Oh, sing to the Lord, all the earth sing a new song. Bless His name, His salvation from day to day. Sing to the Lord, all the earth sing a new song. Bless His name and tell of His salvation from day to day, and declare His glory. For the Lord, He is worthy. Sing to the Lord, all the earth sing a new song. Bless His name, His salvation from day to day. Today sing to the Lord, all the earth sing a new song. Bless His name and tell of His salvation from day to day, and declare His glory. that's due his name. Bring an offering and come into his courts, worship the Lord in splendor. Come and tremble before him, all the earth. Say, among the nations the Lord he reigns, 'cause he established the world and it will never be shaken. Let the heavens and the earth be glad, for the Lord he comes. Let the sea roar, let the trees sing, for the Lord he comes. He will judge the world in righteousness, for the Lord he comes. And the nations with his faithfulness, for the Lord he comes. Let the heavens and the earth be glad, for the Lord he comes. Let the sea roar, let the trees sing, for the Lord he comes. He will judge the world in righteousness, for the Lord he comes. And the nations with his faithfulness, for the Lord